and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will ask everyone to please remain standing. And this is the portion of the meeting where we like to highlight the importance of physical activity in your regular routine. That experts recommend that if you include around 30 minutes of physical activity every day, then it greatly reduces your risk towards chronic disease. And chronic disease makes up about 70% of all of our healthcare spending. Did you do blocking and tackling?
I was warming up.
Okay, our activity today is that we're just going to do kind of some deep breaths exercise and then raise your arms up with it. So just take a deep breath and raise your arms up with it, and then you can let them fall.
Got this on tape?
You could actually do it on your own. You don't actually have to do it with me. So we're like in ballet class. Very good. Go ahead and have a seat. Started in first, then to second. Perfect. All right. Our next order of business is that we have a new appointment to the board.
Yes, Madam Chairman. We have received communication from the town of Michiana Shores that their representative on the commission, as of today, and the nominating letter is in proper form, will be Mr. Jean Paulade, who is a Frenchman, I'm told, by the mayor. So we'll have an international flavor to the commission. We'll welcome him even though his seat is empty. And we'll look forward to his attendance at the next meeting. But he is officially a member of this august body.
Thank you very much. Then that takes us to approval of the minutes from the March 19th meeting of the Executive Board. All members of the commission received, or the Executive Board received a copy of the minutes in your packets. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The minutes are approved. And that takes us to a presentation from Mr. Barloga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Are we all here in one piece? Apparently a rollover semi is a bit of a challenge for all of us. But thankfully, I was working with our intelligent transportation systems and avoided it all, so I ran into the mess on US 20, which is what happened. Okay, let's see. You can turn that light off. Yeah, why not both?
We can't see it.
That's the idea. Okay. Now I feel much more comfortable. Hopefully you do too. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit about an upcoming planning project in NERC, and a pretty exciting one at that. Something that is definitely unique in what we have done before here, and it's kind of merging a couple of disciplines together that we have had over the years, and trying to bring together a document, again, that we believe has yet to be attempted anywhere in this country. And with that said, we'll see if it all makes sense to you. So let's start with this. A long time ago, in a region where you live today, we enjoy bicycle riding. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's in this picture, hopefully not. Oh, really? The turn of the century, before Henry Ford had his way, we were getting around by bicycle. And that was our chief means of transportation. Now, it didn't really take hold at our level of planning. Of course, we were established in the 1960s at NERC until the 1970s, when we put out the first bikeways plan here in Northwest Indiana. I believe my boss here, Steve Strings, actually had a lot to do with that planning, initial planning for bikeways in our region back in the day, trying to get people safely through our region. Here was an idea of how the maps used to look in the day, And it was a rudimentary map at best. We didn't identify anything close to trail corridors at the time, but we did try our best to identify routes on street that would be accommodating for bicycle traffic. And of course, we took a holistic view of it, of our region at the time, which only incorporated Lake and Porter counties. No offense, Mayor. Now, again, those were primarily on our roadways, shared roadways that were, again, accommodated bicycle traffic as safely as possible. Back then, we had a lot more routes that did accommodate bicycle traffic, and of course, this day and age, we have a lot more traffic on our roads. But that was our first stab at it. Now, we understand we have a legacy in this region, and I apologize for my dry mouth, of railroad use. In the 1880s, that's what this map is showing you, we had about 1,000 miles of railroads in northwest Indiana, Lake, Porter, LaPorte counties alone, okay? Railroads were king. They were everywhere. That's how we got around from the mid-1800s, and pretty much was our chief means of freight transportation right until the 1970s. This chart gives you an understanding of the amount of railroad mileage in Indiana alone. In the 1920s, we peaked with nearly 7,500 miles of rail, but as you can see, it took a sharp decline, especially in the 1960s as it was going down to 1995. As an example, we lost in northwest Indiana about 300 miles of that 1,000-mile network, and they were abandoned. Yes, abandoned. And this was not just a phenomenon, again, in our region, it was a national phenomenon of rails being abandoned. And what it did present, however, was an opportunity for us to take advantage of these abandoned corridors, not leave them as community eyesores, but actually reconverting them into benefits for our communities, as we now know them, as rails to trails. This phenomenon did take root in the 1970s as the railroads were shutting down. A group of very visionary individuals said, why not put trails through there? We understand that that's a very difficult thing to do in this day and age with the existing roadway network, but we have these ready to go linear corridors that cut right along communities at angles that are not in line with the traditional roadway grid. It gets people off of that grid, it keeps them safe, and of course, as you all know, railroad corridors, for the most part, are linear parks, about 100 feet wide in many cases of the right-of-way, sometimes wider, sometimes narrower, but again, vegetative and a way of people to really kind of get out and enjoy their community. That said, we decided to go ahead and produce a plan that combined the bicycle networks we had in the region with our trail networks that were now coming online. In the early 1990s, federal legislation allowed for the first trail use of dedicated trail use funding that communities could utilize, and that network has now grown because of that federal program to nearly 15,000 miles nationwide, and we have taken quite the advantage of it. So the first stab at trying to organize those routes came through our 1994 plan, and that's what's demonstrated behind me here. You see a lot of lines, you see them going all sorts of directions. Just as you know, most of these corridors that you see behind me are railroad corridors, the abandoned railroad corridors of our region. A lot of them, though, in this mustard color here are the roadways that we continued from the 1970s planning and, of course, expanded now into LaPorte County. We became quite successful in getting the money allocated to these abandoned corridors. So much so that we put on the books in 2005, the first Ped and Pedal plan. That brought about this. What guides today are planning for trails in northwest Indiana, the Regional Trails and Corridors Priority Network. That original plan that you saw in the 1990s was expanded to this, that again take on all the corridors that we have in our region that are potential for trail redevelopment. And of course, those are the rail corridors that I mentioned, but they also extend to utility corridors, riparian corridors, riverways, and corridors that just make sense, such as communities in here, Valparaiso and Hobart. There is no clean, abandoned corridor, utility corridor between Valpo and Hobart, but makes sense to connect the communities. So that's why we included it as a priority corridor on this map. And it has guided our trail development to this day, and very well, to say the least. In 2010, we put out 5 years later, the 2010 Penn and Pedal Plan, and we expanded upon that map. We added the color blue because blue, in this case, is royalty. Those are the corridors that have been either developed or funded. In 1990, we had about 13 miles of trail on the ground, and probably 10 miles of those trails were substandard. Today, we have nearly 135 miles of trail on the ground, over 10-time increase in our trail mileage, a huge success story, and they continue to go on today. We have new opportunities growing all the time. Mayor Milo can claim the work of the Chessie Corridor now in her community, and we're going to have Singing Sands online in Michigan City soon. So LaPorte County is getting in on the act as well with the other 2 counties, and we're growing quite well. So as you can see, it's been a very popular endeavor, and we have many miles of trails on the ground. As I told you before, here's an example of a couple of them. The Pensy Greenway that runs right through Munster. We have new projects coming online all the time. The new Pride of Highland, a bridge, a US 41 that connects the community of Highland to Wicker Park and is used quite extensively. If you've been to Wicker Park recently, you know people use that circular trail quite a bit for fitness and what have you. And now people from the adjacent neighborhoods have a safe way of accessing that tremendous regional recreation facility. So meanwhile, as we're doing all this amazing work in building our trail network, we have always had a strong environmental presence in this region. Here's a map of the pre-settlement vegetation that was in existence and is in existence today, but what we had here, the diversity of ecological cross-sections here before our settlements took hold between prairie and swampland, bog and fen, dune complex, forest, savanna, marsh. As you can see, it's an amazing interplay of environmental landscapes, probably as unique as you see anywhere in the world today. That is why we have a very strong environmental legacy in this region. Now, before the settlement came, we had a very romantic lakefront along Lake Michigan. And many artists and other people were inspired by it, paintings and what have you. And then our Andrew Carnegie came to town, and he had other ideas with our lakefront. Of course, our ecological outlook in that day wasn't as sharp. We had much more of an economic outlook, knowing about the advantages Lake Michigan held for the expansion of the steel industry, and thus it took root. But of course, that began a very long-lasting conflict between those who wanted to preserve the duneland and those who wanted to expand our environmental or our industrial footprint. Henry Chandler Cowles was one of the first environmentalists on the scene in Northwest Indiana. He led many groups at the turn of the century through the dunes, having them understand the ecological wonders that were out here, and trying to press people, including industry and public officials alike, that we needed to conserve and, as you know now today, save the dunes and keep it for public enjoyment. Of course, back then they didn't have Under Armour gear. That was the recreation attire of the day. Thank goodness for shorts. But anyway, that's how they enjoyed the dunes back at the turn of the century. Of course, things really ramped up later in the 20th century with trying to protect officially most of our lakefront. Of course, we had the Dune State Park that's been around for about a century or so, but we wanted to obviously expand that. And this gentleman right here, Paul Douglas, an Illinois senator, put together a coalition, Save the Dunes, and helped establish, through his work, the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore that we enjoy today. A giant monumental achievement for our environmental legacy. And today, as you know, that Lakeshore National establishment here runs pretty much through Lake and Porter counties. It touches into LaPorte in some areas, but it's expanded quite well. It's becoming more and more popular, and we're getting more and more visitors to our lakefront because of this attraction, and doing as much as we can to preserve much of the ecology throughout the dunes as well, which was again a great legacy of the establishment of the National Lakeshore. We have champions in our region that we've had for years advocating it for, from Paul Douglas, from Mr. Cowles. We have, of course, Lee Botts, as we're all familiar with, and Mark Reshkin and other people that have worked tirelessly on preserving not only the dunes ecology, but ecology throughout the entire Northwest Indiana region. Lee was especially instrumental in doing this conservation revolution concept here within the last decade, and identifying a number of properties and getting them preserved for future use and future enjoyment by our wildlife, and try to make sure that is a legacy that we can establish for our future. And we have plenty of it in our region. We have lots of pockets, some small, some much larger, of ecological enjoyment that many of us know and treasure today. And you can see many of that, and of course you can thank people like Lee Botts and other agencies such as Save the Dunes, Shirley Hines, Nature Conservancy, and the like, that have been able to expand our environmental footprint in the region. So, with all that said, with the amount of work that was happening regarding the environment in Northwest Indiana, we received back in 2007 at NERC a grant from the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation of Chicago to put together the first Greenways and Blueways plan. This is a snapshot of us meeting with a number of local officials on the planning process, and then in 2007 we're able to release Greenways and Blueways, which we probably recognize today. Now that map that came out of the process, to say the least, is a bit organic. When you see Greenway plans, they don't look like this. They're pretty straight. They're kind of how you would, draw a Greenways map with a T-square. T-square still exists. It's all on AutoCAD now. I'm dating myself. But these are pockets of ecological value, both public and private, that were identified to expand our footprint in Northwest Indiana, because in our estimation, conservation can happen anywhere. And as you can see from this map, you could probably identify pockets of it within your own community. The idea was we would be able to inspire and advise communities throughout the region through this map to do some conservation efforts on their own at their own local level, because you really can't escape it. It's everywhere. And the idea is to bring these environmental areas, these areas of conservation and of ecological value together as a network that would provide wildlife habitat and of course help with our water quality and air quality and just quality of life in general. And that was the concept behind this plan. But it wasn't just that. There was also another avenue of planning that included blueways or water trail planning. It was the first time that we ever attempted to actually plan out our water trail routes, okay? The best thing about water trail planning is that they are already there. You just got to get to them somehow. It's a matter of access. It's a matter of cleaning them out. We have identified about 15 corridors in all, from Lake Michigan and the Kankakee River to a number of previously called ditches that we're trying to rename. Instead of Hart Ditch, Plum Creek, things like that, Beaver Dam Creek. But we're working on these avenues of water enjoyment, including Cedar Creek in Lowell and up into Cedar Lake, the Lakes of LaPorte, Trail Creek, Salt Creek, and the like, to get people to enjoy these areas of recreation more often, and again, to see our region from another perspective. We were able to identify them individually with opportunities for access and the challenges that were presented based on water flow, seasonal flow, because many of these creekways are not navigable all year long, only during areas like in the spring and the summer, and we want to make sure we identified that. But again, getting local officials and private citizens both on board with the concept of water trail development and getting them excited about bringing that to their own community. We've had some great successes, the establishment of a national recreation water trail along Lake Michigan. People think that's a little dangerous. Well, we were able to identify places where people could actually access along the lake safely and make sure that they do have safe harbor in the case of storms and sudden weather twists where they could somehow dock over at places such as U.S. Steel or ArcelorMittal in East Chicago, again, temporarily while those storms pass by. Of course, we have wonderful other avenues, me enjoying the Kankakee River for one. Whoops, that went a little too fast. The Kankakee River, again, is a historical water trail from the Native American days. And it was a matter of commerce and transportation for them. Of course, today it's primarily recreation. But again, as much as you know about the Kankakee River, how much do you know about getting to the Kankakee River? About putting your canoe in the Kankakee River, and then where are you going to go? Where are you going to get out? What are you going to enjoy? Those are the types of amenities that we're trying to identify. It doesn't hurt that we have a champion such as this gentleman, who you probably know, Dan Platt. When we put the plan out back in 2007, we had, to say the least, a huge surge of interest from the water trail community, because for the first time like ever, they were identified and they were having some attention paid to them. So this guy decided to put together a group called the Northwest Indiana Paddling Association, and to say that their growth has been a success has been an understatement. This was their annual meeting a few weeks ago. It seems like it. Dan is way back here on the stage trying to rally his troop. They have grown to nearly 500 members strong in only a few short years, which from our regional's perspective that we have the advantage of looking at here at NERC is unheard of. And again, it just plays to the fact of how popular these avenues are. And they're not only members, they're not only there on the trails or just paddling for fun, they're working with communities directly, working with them on policy, working with them on obstruction removal, even fish habitat for better fishing. So it's really been a great success story in how our regional planning has been able to spin off into local advocacy. Okay, so we have a 2007 plan and we have a 2010 bicycle pedestrian plan. So what do? Well, first of all, we have to identify what a greenway is, okay? So this is a gigantic definition that we're all going to read together very slowly. No, we're not going to do that. But let me summarize. A greenway comes in many flavors. It comes in active, it comes in passive, there's conservation, there's trails. But when we put out a Greenways and Blueways plan in 2007, we didn't identify any trails. Those were in our ped and pedal plan. So people were pretty confused, like, wait, I thought greenways were trails. We're like, well, they are, but they're also this. So we wanted to say, okay, what does that mean? I mean, it comes in, again, all these different varieties, water trails, land trails, areas of wildlife conservation, areas of wetland protection. Of course, we have elaborate greenways themselves that include bicycle and pedestrian bridges. So all that's incorporated in the family of greenways. And of course, we have these, brownfields, old industrial sites or other types of sites that have been abandoned that need to be cleaned up and brought back to useful life. In many cases, in a way that expands our greenways network. So riddle me this, right? We have two plans. What do we do with them? NERC is deciding to finally mesh them together, what we're calling the 2020 Greenways and Blueways plan. And this is an idea that has come about through three major focuses. First, conservation. We talked about that. We're doing great work on that in this region. Recreation. We have a Greenways network that taps into our recreation facilities and has become a destination for that. And transportation, an emerging non-motorized network that takes full advantage of our greenways, brings people into these areas of enjoyment, but also provides a way of ultimate transportation for the people in this region. The idea breaks upon a spectrum. We have the three major avenues of conservation, recreation, and transportation. That spectrum includes a number of on-the-ground improvements, including open space conservation, water trails, surface trails, and as we have worked here at the regional level before, complete streets. And there's a number of subtopics that we work with as well, with wildlife habitat and brownfields, with open space, water trail development with riparian health, launch locations, fish habitat. Of course, we have a number of issues that relate to surface trails, including the establishment of linear parks, how to handle abandoned railroads, dealing with trail counts. Trail counts is a pretty big deal. People would like to know who uses our trails. I would. We'd like to get that established. Wayfinding, inventory, priority routes, and of course, complete streets, which have been quite a successful initiative at NERC as we see different avenues come on board, including safe routes to school, traffic calming, crash data, bike parking, and trying to establish bicycle and walk-friendly communities. And we're also looking to do community profiles to establish benchmarks for all of our regional municipalities to give them an understanding of where they are, where they need to be to get up to speed with current best practice policies. So, ripping off a slide from the Star Wars movie, we are looking to have this plan before you for approval in December 2015. I am working directly with Kathy Luther on this project and Joe Exel. We are working on bringing together a number of stakeholders. I've been presenting before a number of groups on this matter, and we're going to be kicking this off in full within the next month, now that we are rolling out and beginning to conclude our update to the 2040 regional plan. So we hope to talk to you individually, because that's what we would like to do. We want to all bring you into the dialogue here, and we'll get going with a number of meetings, as well as some public meetings that I'll be working with Stephen on, and he'll be working with me on establishing sites. So it's going to be an exciting endeavor. I don't think we've ever seen the environmental aspect combined before with our non-motorized aspect, but here at NERC, these are two disciplines that we champion well, and we want to bring this really to its full potential. So that's my presentation. Thank you for your time. I'll take any questions if there are any. Yes?
That was an enlightening presentation. Truly,
Thank you.
That was really mind-boggling. Just to go back to the railroad corridors.
Yes.
Did the railroads deed that to communities, or how do you gain possession of these railroad corridors?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question. Jim, did you want to answer that, Jim?
Well, I just know in our case,
Yes.
in Chesterton, when we got the Duneland Prairie Trail, it was announced by the EJ&E Railroad that they were going to parcel out their abandoned railway all the way to 149 from Chesterton, from 15th Street, or they made us a blanket offer, and this was in the early 80s, that we could buy it, use it for a utility corridor. And then as the discussion continued, it evolved into a trail utility corridor combination, a lot of different things. We just went out and bought it with our own funds at that point. There was very little support in the late 70s, early 80s, where you could go to get money for this kind of thing. So
Right.
in that case, we ponied up for it, and we've been glad ever since.
Yes, you have. You know, that question, I can sit here for another half hour and unpack it. It is extremely complex because the railroads were established in the 1800s, and in many cases, it could be an easement, it could be a fee simple issue. The railroad corporation itself could have took off. There could be quick claim deeds and quiet title deeds that complicate the matter as well. I always tell people, yeah, designing trails is easy. Trying to get the land, that's the complicated part. And these railroad corridors, as linear and as clean as they look, title work's a whole different story. That's why people like Mr. Holland.
This whole matter spent years in front of the Indiana Supreme Court. Mitch is right, there were two ways the railroads around here got this land. The early days, they were given grants by the government, and that was a much cleaner situation. When the railroads had to acquire the land, when they acquired them, many of the deeds had revisionary provisions in them that said if you ever stop using this as a railroad, it goes back. Normally it was the adjoining landowners who had deeded it to you in the first place. So there was a big, long line of litigation and dispute over the railroad is abandoning the right-of-way. Now what happens to the land? And some of the adjoining landowners had legitimate rights in these deeds to claim that we get the land back when you stop using it as a railroad.
And to just emphasize this point, there's a corridor in Lake County from Crown Point to Hebron along the old Pensy line that Lake County Parks has been developing now for 15 years, now going on 16. It's kind of hard when you have 130 land interests along a 9-mile corridor, and it's a diagonal, so you got people across the street owning stuff. It's pizza at its finest. It's green, too.
It keeps title insurance companies busy.
Oh, yeah, it keeps them happily employed, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, there are other problems. In some cases, the agents for the railroads took title in their names, then leased to the railroads, and then 100 years later, we discovered that their families were entitled to some kind of compensation. But
back to the trail along the Kankakee, I don't know if you're aware, Jody Melton, the executive director, and I have been discussing with our neighbors to the south, Newton and Jasper counties, about the possibility of having trails on that side of the river. I suggest that you include them in our conversation. And Curbsy, their regional MPO. There's a great opportunity there. There's fewer landowners, fewer crossings, and we could cross back and forth possibly, but I see Jasper County as having more potential for providing a continuous trail without having to do crossovers.
And that's a good point, because NERC did produce a bicycle and pedestrian plan for Jasper County just a couple of years ago. And we did that out of the goodness of our heart. And it's kind of a cooperative agreement with their county economic development department. So we have that on the books, and we're definitely working with Jody at this time.
And NIPSCO has come into play also in some of those trails.
NIPSCO's been a champion.
Yeah.
I mean, NIPSCO has been one of the best trail partners we can imagine. We have 30 miles of trails on NIPSCO corridor today, and that continues to expand. So they've been wonderful to work with. Yes?
Mitch, great presentation.
Thank you.
I love the idea. I think you really presented an excellent snapshot of the environmental legacy and the opportunities. Thank you. But
Thank you.
on the railroad subject, we're having a heck of a time right now getting some trails put through, and we're in discussions with the railroad. And it's not so much land title, it's extreme positions that
Yes.
the railroad's taking in terms, positions so extreme that if they would be taken, there might never be a trail again in Northwest Indiana. I'm just wondering if there's a way, our communities are probably having these discussions separately with different railroads. Is there a way to leverage our communities together to say what's reasonable, what's a reasonable position, cite precedent, so that we can get kind of out of these individual battles with railroads?
You know, and that's a fantastic question, because railroads, to say the least, are a bit challenging to work with. And challenging is an understatement. They really don't recognize anything. They don't see trails as a benefit to them in the slightest. They just think liability. And that's okay to an extent, but then, as you say, it gets extreme. And then it's like, wait, we have policies on the book nationally. We have rails and trails projects nationally that work wonderful together. Okay, it can happen. And they still just turn a blind eye. So in Michigan City, we're working with the congressman's office. We've done our best trying to work with the governor's office, the mayor has, on this matter. And they're trying to bring that to bear. And if anything from NERC could be helpful, you know, I would have been on it a long time ago. But we're trying to keep this more localized at this time. But if there's things we can do from a regional perspective, that's worth investigating. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I would just point out, in the case of Michigan City, we're up against these extreme liability concerns with a crossing on a trail, at the same time that we have a railroad running right through the middle of a street with cars going, and perhaps bicycles on both sides. So I'm just asking for a reasonable position, and if other communities have been able to get there, which certainly they have, because I see more trails to the east than there are to the west, or more trails to the west than there are to the east. You know, how did you get it done, and would you be kind of open ears on that subject?
Yeah, and you do have a unique situation where the train does block traffic on US 20 in particular, or 12, US 12.
US 12, correct.
They throw in all sorts of unique examples that are not like this, and you get into that kind of dialogue. Oh, we're not them, we're this, and it just doesn't stop. So patience, I think we're going to break through that logjam. We've already got an Amtrak agreement, so that's been helpful, and we're working through it slowly. But I agree, we need maybe a much more regional approach on this.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, one more.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed on the map where you showed the corridors, this is where you had the wide line showing all the railroads, and it seemed there was a very obvious blank space where the Moonin line comes along the west side of the Lake County. That's the corridor for the South Shore expansion. Had that existed in other maps that showed as a part of a potential bike trail, is it possible? And when you see the map, you see that would be an obvious route for people coming from south to get to the north side of the county, but it's off your map. It kind of ends,
It was
and
added
then it's
in.
blanks.
It was added in. That's not the recent map, so I apologize for not throwing the updated map on there.
Okay.
As you know, the Monon is a completed corridor from Munster up to Hammond at this
Yes.
point. We
But it's
do-
not on that map.
Well, it's been put on the map.
Okay.
And of course, it's a completed trail, so we definitely want to identify that. But we want to definitely expand that south because the corridor continues south of Dyer, and we want to see how that fleshes out too. But a lot of that's been chewed up over the years, and we have to keep that into
Well, will we be fighting to have a trail rail corridor there? Is that
Yes.
part of the plan?
Yes, the South Shore Line is of the understanding that the trail will retain its existence after the train. If the train becomes a reality in Hammond, the trail will still remain.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much. Very good presentation. Right, that takes us to the report of the chair. I had the opportunity to meet with Ty, and very appreciative of Michael Griffin's time as well. That we discussed last week the continuation of the sort of organization of our committees overall, and if you'll recall, I'll show you sort of my marked up version of our committee diagram of where we're moving with some of our organization and structure overall. I think we've got a sound basis for everything, and we discussed a little bit of adjusting some of the titles that previously there was the Transportation Finance Committee, which exists kind of on this far end here, and we thought we'd adjust that title to being the Transportation Resource and Oversight Committee. That helps communicate that not only are projects initiating from these particular groups, but then there is still the oversight aspect that these two different groups will have of projects that have been put forward. Making sure that we're maintaining schedule and maintaining cost control overall. We talked a little bit about what would constitute a quorum, and I think that there was a consensus amongst us of saying that a quorum would be a majority of those in attendance, but I think not less than 3 if you have a smaller group there, that you don't want to get down to too low of numbers, but we don't want to get to a point that we're not able to have progress without having enough members in attendance. The one, I think, sort of remaining item, the hanging chad, if you will, is with the Technical Planning Committee, that we're still discussing a little bit of how that makeup would be. There was, I guess, an initiative from us to be able to have a representative from each of these topical committees that we discussed here that would sit on this Technical Planning Committee, and then I think that maybe there would be an opportunity to have maybe 1 or 2 other representatives from each county that then would be a part of this group. We want to make sure that we're not building a committee that's unwieldy, that Mary actually sent us a list of who could be considered a part of the TPC right now, and it was unbelievable, the number of people that have participated in the meetings, and there's not really I think, good direction on what constitutes a representative of the TPC, and there could certainly be instances where there may be unfair representation for particular communities because of the number of seats that they would fill at the table with the way that it's currently structured. So that's why we want to make sure that we're organizing ourselves appropriately with this technical planning committee here. So we'll have that hammered out, I think, a little bit more by the May full commission meeting, and I'll send all that information out to everyone so that you have plenty of time to digest that and offer any feedback. I'll certainly open the floor at this point if there's any thoughts that anybody wants to provide on this initiative before we move forward. Okay, well, thank you very much. Then that takes us to the report of the executive director.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Just several quick things. First of all, Kathy Luther and her staff have done a great job participating in the Marquette Plan update. This is taking the Phase 1 and Phase 2 and now combining it into essentially a Phase 3 Marquette Plan 2015. That draft is up on our website. If you happen to take a look and have any comments, I think Kathy's welcome to take them, hopefully to wrap it up by the end of the month in April. But a phenomenal document. Mike Molner's here as well, in our excellent partnership in working on this document. So just that Marquette Plan continues to get better and better with this phase. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Also, just speaking of Kathy and her staff and the work she did, there's also, related to the Greenways and Blueways, that the 2020 Greenways and Blueways that Mitch and Kathy are working very closely on. They've just done a tremendous job coordinating efforts here. The green infrastructure vision work that Kathy's folks did in relation to the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan is also a great basis for a lot of this work. So we're bringing a bunch of tools together to apply to all of these efforts that are happening, and there's a lot of good stuff that's been done that we're trying to maximize the potential of. Relating to that kind of staff work, another item I wanted to mention is that we have offered position and have accepted from the candidate for our new regional planner and policy analyst. This essentially, in some ways, morphs two prior positions that we had. Kevin Garcia, who had left our staff to go to Urbana-Champaign, that had done a lot of data work, and then Jack Eskin, who went to Gary. We've taken essentially the best of what those positions do and created this new policy analyst position. And my goal with this is to really recapture what I think NERC was pretty strong on at one time, and just for whatever reason, attrition and whatnot, I think maybe hasn't quite done as much as we could do in this regard, which is to provide a better service to you in how we analyze census data, do projections, analyze trends, be able to do specific analyses for your communities upon your request, and have that more robust function within NERC. So that's what this individual will be doing. His name is James Winters. He's another UIC product, University of Illinois at Chicago. I'm currently working for the Southwestern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. And I want to give kudos to Steve. Steve did a massive job in screening candidates for this position. A lot of phone calls, a lot of reference checks. Really did exceptional due diligence. And we had 4 finalists, and honestly, all 4 of those we all agreed would be excellent candidates for this position. But we have offered it to James Winters. He's accepted. Start date is June 1st. So we'll introduce him to you in June for sure. But you'll have a new face around here to work with you and whatever needs you have. And I'll mention this too. One of the things that I emphasize to all 4 of the finalists is that what we want this person to be able to do also is, we know how this happens with grant opportunities when they come up. Sometimes it's a very short time frame by the time you find out about the grant and need to put that together. And we want to have this person on staff be able to work with you in your communities when you have the ability to go forward with some grant opportunity, to be able to get the information you need very quickly and be very nimble in assembling that data. So I think this person will serve you well. We really highlighted the customer service aspect of this. So we look forward to having James on board. Just a couple more very quick things. This coming up, starting this weekend, we have several staff here going to the National Conference of the American Planning Association. This is the premier planning event once a year. I've probably been to just about every one for the past 20 plus years. So we'll be heading off to that. I'm actually leaving directly after this meeting to fly to Seattle, which is where the conference is, to participate in a pre-conference event that is a gathering of MPOs across the country that have livable communities programs. And so I'll be serving on a panel about the Creating Livable Communities program that NERC has that has gotten out of the gate, and what our future plans are for that program. So we're looking forward to participating in that. The last 2 things I want to mention is just to remind you that May will be a full commission meeting. Again, typically we've done this in April, but in order to accommodate the timeline of the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan amendment, we will be having the May meeting be a full commission meeting. So if you can please make sure you attend that, that would be great. And lastly, there are some flyers out by the receptionist desk, and I think if you didn't get this in email, you have lots of flyers. There's a local food summit on April 24th. The deadline for registration is tomorrow, April 17th. This is an aspect that I think Kevin Garcia had largely taken the lead in creating a local food study before I got here. Something that we haven't quite figured out exact funding to pursue, but I think is critically important. And so I'm happy that Purdue and Valparaiso University Law School, Dave, and others are helping to put on. Again, that's April 24th, but the registration is due tomorrow. Thank you. Unless there's any questions about it.
I'm registered to go to that.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
You will eat well.
All right, then that'll take us to the Finance and Personnel Committee report. We'll turn to Commissioner Riley.
Thank you. The Finance and Personnel Committee met this morning at 8 o'clock. And we have two actions that are recommended for the Executive Board approval. The first action is Resolution 15-10, an equipment maintenance resolution that's found on page 9. And this resolution is a twofold resolution. As Attorney Hollenbeck stated, it's proactive and reactive. And it concerns ensuring that our subrecipients that lease the buses from NERC are in compliance with the requirements of the Federal Transit Authority as far as maintenance is concerned. And so what the resolution does, it authorizes NERC to monitor and review the maintenance plans of those subrecipients every 2 years, and to make sure that they don't vary from the manufacturer's specifications and recommendations, and that the maintenance plans are being followed. There were some subrecipients that are contracting out the maintenance to maintenance providers, and so we just want to make sure that they are complying with the FTA requirements. That's the proactive part. And then you have the reactive part. During the monitoring and inspection, if we find out that these subrecipients are not in compliance, then we're going to take some corrective action. We're going to give them 60 days to correct whatever deficiency is occurring. And if they don't correct the actions, then we will withhold the pass-through transit funding, because we don't want actions by one subrecipient to have a negative impact on all of the subrecipients. We don't want the FDA to withhold funds for all of the bus providers that are leasing buses from NERC. So that's basically what this resolution encompasses. And so I'm making a motion for adoption of resolution number 15-10.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting resolution 15-10 as presented, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That is approved.
Okay, the next item that was acted on in the Finance and Personnel Committee was procurement recommendation, and that's number 14-10, and it's found on page 11. And the Finance Committee is recommending that you approve the purchase of 2 propane-fueled replacement vehicles for the port transport, and 85% of that cost will come out of FTA funds, and 15% will come from the city of LaPorte. And the replacement costs are not to exceed $136,000 in federal funds. And I'd like to make a motion to approve procurement number 14-10.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving procurement 14-10, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That is approved.
Thank you.
Then that takes us to the EMPC, and I'll turn to Councilman Benson.
Thank you. In the packet is the consent agenda and draft minutes. We worked on the CMAQ and the 2040 update, the Marquette plans. The Earth Day is April 22nd. Green Gary is April 25th at Marquette Park, and the Calumet Summit is May 12th and 13th. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Then I'll turn to the TPC meeting and Mr. Dobus.
Thank you. The Transportation Policy Committee met on April 13th. The committee heard an update from NERC staff on the project planning review, which staff will undertake for the current project applications. A more refined process is planned for future solicitations. For more information about this review, please contact Ms. Barloga. The Transportation Policy Committee approved the functional classification system update and congestion management process update, both of which will become part of the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Update companion to be presented for adoption by the full commission at its meeting on May 21st. Staff presented a review of the 2040 plan update, including comments from recent public meetings. The public comment period has been extended until April 27th. The next Transportation Policy Committee is scheduled for 9 a.m. Tuesday, May 12th. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. I believe that then takes us to Mr. Powers from NDOT.
Morning, everyone. When I was here last time, I made the mistake of uttering that dreadful white four-letter word, thinking it was over. It wasn't. You may recall it snowed a week later, so I'll try not to ever say that again here. That being said, the good news is, because you know what follows snow is holes. So the asphalt plants are open, and we are actively engaged in making far more permanent repairs to the roads in and around our district, which are about 5,000 main miles. So bear with us. We're on it. The plants are open, and we're moving hard toward making those restorations. You'll also see the barrels are returning. Construction season's upon us, so if you would, please keep the message out. The other side of barrels is better roads. While barrels are out, it's an inconvenience. We're all aware of that. We do our best to move traffic the best we can, keep things moving the best we can during the construction phase. But again, on the other side is a much better day and a much better road. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of construction happening, not only here, but throughout the state. If you've driven south on 65 lately, you know what I'm talking about. It's quite a trip going to Indy now, but it's okay. It will be a better day. I think that's about it, other than I don't have any follow-on items that I can think of, unless you have any questions for me. That's it.
All right, thank you very much.
If you don't mind, one quick thing about the closure on 94.
Yes.
Anybody wants an update before when they're leaving? Looks like we're going to be closing all but one lane eastbound, one lane westbound I-94 right by the 149 exit. That's the best case scenario. That's going to happen in about an hour. That's the goal. And for those who don't know, this is due to an accident with a semi that hit one of our message boards. So we have to remove that actual sign itself. We're bringing a crane in to do that. So best case scenario, one lane westbound, one lane eastbound near the 149 exit. But it's possible we may have to close all westbound lanes entirely. Just have to wait till the crane's on the scene and see what happens with that. This closure could last through the entire afternoon. So just heads up as you're leaving or future travels throughout the day.
Is there any casualty in that event?
Not that I know of, no injuries that I know of.
And I'm going to go back to the CRP update meeting.
I just wanted to commend them on their communication of that, because before the F&T meeting at 8 o'clock this morning, we had a notice that had come from them to Mary that it was closed, to use an alternate route. Commissioner Allen made it from Lake County over here on time for an 8 o'clock meeting, and the posts and everything. So anyway, I know it's a nightmare, but good job communicating.
And we tweeted it as well. So.
I'd like to add that it was broadcast on the radio, and they even announced that, folks, you have so much time before we're bringing out the crane. So appreciate the notice of both holdups.
So we call it communication director.
That's why I was saying so.
I was missing one of those for my first few months here. Now I have one. Called Matt Dykstra. Thanks, Matt.
Yep, you bet.
Okay, now I'm going to come back to the CRP update meeting reports, and I believe, Steve, you have an update on that? Okay. The other Steve, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Super brief. Just sort of wanted to touch on this a little bit more since this is the first time that we've had to do this since we adopted the 2014 Public Participation Plan last December. As part of that, we have to do meeting reports, basically just sort of a quick overview of what happened at the meeting, brief summary of comments, things like that. So this is the first opportunity we got to trot that out. So pages 17 to 25 in your agenda, you'll see the reports for all the CRP update meetings in there. These are also on our website. They're also getting sent to all of the participants in the meeting. If they left contact information, we have a way to get it to them. We are getting it to them. I dropped off the ones that had to be mailed at the post office just yesterday. So that's getting done. As always, there's going to be a more detailed comment report that will be coming at the end of the public comment period, which, as Commissioner Doba said, has been extended to a week from this upcoming Monday, the 27th. So if you still have comments, if you think of anything, know anybody who has something, make sure they get it to us before then, and then you'll be seeing the comment report prior to any action. So that's it. I just sort of wanted to bring attention to that since that's the first time that we've kind of gone through this. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, then that'll take us down to the Economic Development District. I'll start with Commissioner Allen.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to report. Our new director, Matt Roof, did indicate that he received a recommendation from the Indiana Economic Development Corporation that he will transfer to the Economic Development Administration over in Chicago, recommending that we be officially designated as an economic development district. He is waiting for a similar recommendation from Governor Pence that he feels that he should be able to get that shortly. And that was one of the final prerequisites that the Economic Development Administration was requiring us to fulfill. So hopefully after we get these two recommendations and get them over there, I hope that all of the prerequisites will have been met. I also want to announce that our director, Matt Roof, is tentatively scheduling a SEDS meeting May 1st at 9:30 a.m. In this facility here. So that's a tentative date. If that becomes the effective date, there will be a notice sent out to indicate that we're going to have a meeting on that date. I don't have anything further to report.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other business to come before the executive board today? I have no additional business, so that takes us to public comment, and we have one individual, Mr. Nowacki, who has signed up.
Good morning. My name's Jim Nowacki. I'm a resident of the city of Gary. I looked at some of the draft for the 2040 plan. I'm discouraged, but I do not lose heart. I'm reminded in Luke's gospel, there's a story about the widow who complained to the judge. Judge feared neither man nor God. And she said, "Give me justice." And she said over and over again, "Give me justice." Eventually, the judge broke down and gave the widow what she needed. And I think sometimes we're in that position in Gary. We heard a presentation from Mitch, talked about the trail plans, water trails, etc. And I noticed very obviously on the plan there were very few access points in his proposal for water trail access. This is just part of the plan. I'm not saying it's you can't put a dot in it at some point. Sure you can. But I'm saying as it comes before the board, obviously there are no black dots. There's only one black dot regarding that. From time to time, I've complained about major projects in our city. We hear all the time here at NERC about the plans, and part of this plan too, we talk about complete streets. And I've complained many times about the substantial investment the state made in 1220. Sometimes I feel, well, you know, I've complained about it enough. But as someone who walks, and I walk everywhere, and I see other people trying to traverse in other modes along 1220, taking their lives into their hands. And just so you'll understand, you cannot walk along 1220. You can't walk in the street, and you can't walk along the side because the side is so overgrown. And then you can't walk in the street because we've got 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, truck traffic, all exceeding the speed limit. And you don't have a safe way to cross those streets. Some of the signaling is more than a mile apart. This is in the middle of one of the largest city in our county. But the plan is you don't have a safe way to cross 1220 more than a mile apart for signaling. So, like the widow in Luke's gospel, I understand you have to keep complaining. And judges who fear neither God nor man, but if you keep complaining, then I think that's going to be the solution to make Gary look more like the surrounding communities. Because in every plan we talk about that. We want to make sure that we don't have the hole in the donut. But every time we make decisions, for instance, I'm going to go back to 1220 for just 1 minute, and then I'm done. They said it was going to be too expensive to mill the road down the proper depth. This is what caused the problem. The state said, we don't want to mill the road down to the proper depth. We just want to mill it a little bit so that we can put the pavement in. And that created a problem from one end of the city to the other end of the city, because now the road is 4 or 6 inches higher than it was supposed to be. Interfered with all the sidewalks, interfered with all the intersections, water puddling up and down the line. And it was all so that we could get truck traffic, 3 lanes of truck traffic east, 3 lanes of truck traffic west, no signaling to cross the street, no sidewalks, no safe way to move in that corridor. So I'm going to take the Gospel of Luke to heart, and like that widow, I'm going to keep complaining. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just one item I did want to touch on. You mentioned the concerns about access points. I think the purpose of this initiative that Mr. Barloga is endeavoring upon is to identify some of those access points, to be able to communicate them so that individuals can more readily access them.
Well, the state created them. There were signals before, they've removed signals.
I'm talking about the plan with the Blueways and Greenways trail.
All right, great.
Madam Chair, I'd add to that we have to purchase enough land to park people, to make it extremely accessible. And I don't think most people understand it's not a right to enter off of private property. We have to make efforts to make a safe entry point, and often that involves concrete ramps as well. So it's an investment.
Sure.
So this was a great plan to project the future. Thank you.
Okay, then that wraps up our public comment section. Are there any announcements? No, Mr. Carney?
No, I don't have any.
I'll make an announcement since Bob.
All right.
Earth Day will be celebrated in Porter County. Everybody's welcome at Expo Center. That's off of State Road 49 south of Valparaiso. And it's a fairly big event these days. But that'll be the 18th, Saturday, coming up. And I will say I'm going to meet with somebody on an access point on Kankakee River on Saturday morning, so I'll be late for that.
We didn't have and we're playing the
birthday bingo, you have to find out where to get a stamp.
Also, I'll add, we're having a seminar that's sponsored by INAFSA, the Indiana Association of State Floodplain Managers, here in this room on Friday, May 1st. It's limited to 50 people. It's being presented by various state and federal agencies. So there's no cost. It's lunch on your own, but I suggest if you have floodplain managers, the people that administer your floodplain ordinance, that you have them in attendance, because that's a large part of the discussion.
Thank you.
Madam, just briefly, the city of Michigan City recently held a groundbreaking for the first art space project in the state of Indiana. This is on our main drag, Franklin Street. What was a Montgomery Wards and City Hall over the years, and a 6-story building that's been vacant for 30 years. Will now have a $15 million renovation of 45 artist live workspaces and a first floor of gallery and retail, and a green alley to the north with a market feature. So it's funded, it's under construction, there's cranes on Franklin Street, which is stimulating a lot of other investment, and there's a real resurgence for downtown Michigan City. It's pretty exciting, so if you haven't been down there recently, several new restaurants have opened on Franklin, and we're enjoying the ride thus far, so thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Then I would entertain a motion for adjournment. I think I have a second. All those in favor, please shall we say aye.
Pleasure.